Thanks, Stephanie. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ISGAP Holocaust and Literature Seminar Series. Today, we have with us Professor Garber. Thank you, Professor. It's an honor for us to host you. Professor Garber is Emeritus Professor and Chair of Jewish Studies and Philosophy at Los Angeles Valley College. He has served as Visiting Professor of Religious Studies at UC Riverside, Rosenthal Professor of Judaic Studies at Case Western Reserve University, Cleveland, and as President of the National Association of Professors of Hebrew. He served as the editor of Shoah, now Editor Emeritus, editor of ISGAP, and book review editor of Journal of Ecumenical Studies. He has presented and has authored hundreds of articles and reviews, both academic and popular. And his publications include almost 16 scholarly books, including his most recent co-written volume, Judaism and Jesus, published by Cambridge Scholars in 2020, and co-edited volumes, The Annotated Passover Haggadah, published by GCRR Press, 2021, and Teaching the Shoah, Mandate and Momentum, published by Cambridge Scholars, 2023. Finally, Maven in Blue Jeans, a festschrift in honor of Garber, was published by Purdue University Press in 2009. Professor Garber's recent publication also includes his chapter on methodology, reason and revelation, published in the Journal of Ecumenical Studies, volume number 59. It's an honor for us to host you, Professor. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mihag, and good morning or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching this particular seminar. I was asked to respond to literary responses dealing with the Shoah, otherwise known to the world as the Holocaust. And let me perhaps begin by that last article that Mihag referred to, an article published in the Journal of Ecumenical Studies that recently came out. The article is part of a feature of the JES, the Journal of Ecumenical Studies, entitled as Reason, as Exploration and Responses. I was invited to do the exploration, and my good colleague and co-editor with me, Ken Hansen, was responsible for the response. The article deals with reason, which is academic appreciation and evaluation of material, and revelation. Revelation is the term that scholars use for that which is the spiritual, that which is the inevitable, in the sense that it's beyond man's scope and man's ability to understand. I work with those two methods, and that's how I'm going to present my little talk today on literary responses to the Shoah, how one sees it from both a theological point of view, if you will, revelationary, and from that which is academic, or that which is more historical. Regarding the latter, let me make it very clear. I do not, as an individual and as a person who deals with scholarship, take very seriously what's called the factuality of events. Factuality, as the term implies, are facts of facts of facts. I don't believe facts of facts of facts is understood by anybody. What is understood is the impression of a fact. What's understood is an understanding of a fact. What's understood is the mind focusing on what sees to be the fact, and the fact becomes something that is a little different. So the factual is basically an actual. An actual is how we conduct ourselves, privately, publicly, independently, spiritually, etc. Not necessarily are our actual actions that which are factual, if factual can never be maintained. And let me give you several examples. There is a rabbinic tradition, this will be part of the revelationary part of my talk, whereby the rabbis known as the sages of 2,000 or so years ago essentially had problems with the received text of the Torah. The Torah is a term that more often gets mistranslated as law. That's not what Torah means. Torah means teaching, and Torah authority is teaching authority. And so the Torah, as the Torah is a Torah, represents, if you will, the authoritative concept of God's revelation to man. So goes rabbinic Jewish tradition. But if one takes a look at the Torah, of which I have a printed Bible in front of me, the very first sentence seems to present a problem. I read from the Hebrew text, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. I read from the translation of a 1917 Jewish Publication Society of America translation as In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. I read from another translation which has the phrase, when God began to create heaven and earth. The question is there a distinction between when God began to create heaven and earth or the King James Version, which is responsible for the translation, in the beginning God created heaven and earth? My conclusion is that both of these attempts are translations, not necessarily the received text. And the received text as a received text can also be understood as being handed down from one hand to another hand, not necessarily the revelation. That's what I mean by actuals and factuals. In fact, as I take a look at the received text, Reshit, the very first word in Hebrew, does not mean in the beginning. The Hebrew phrase in the beginning is barishonah. The very first Hebrew word in the Hebrew text of the Torah is in a beginning of. Listen to my English. In a beginning of. Will you then expect a word to follow? The next word in the Hebrew text is the verb bara, created. The third word is the word Elohim, the word that translates either as God or gods, for that matter. The question is, in a beginning of what? There's missing the phrase of what the beginning is, unless we read it as beginning of God. And if that's so, then who is responsible for the verb bara, created? See what I'm getting at? You don't know the Hebrew, I do. I know the Hebrew unvocalized, which is how the Torah is transmitted. You read the Hebrew vocalized, which is another way of suggesting how to read the text, not necessarily the original, which is unvocalized. That's what I mean by the factuals being contested, and the actuals is how we conduct ourselves. In addition to that, in a beginning, the word is now missing, beginning of what? God created. Then it says, Eight Hashemayim v'Eight Haaretz. That word eight is not a direct object marker. That's the word et. When you translate God created the heaven, the earth, then the word should be et hashemayim v'et haaretz. What I see vocalized in the text is eight hashemayim v'et haaretz, and the word eight is a preposition with the heaven and with the earth. Get it? If you see the unvocalized, you can read the word as et or eight. If you see it vocalized, it reads as eight with, not as direct marker et. And so what I have in that very first sentence, if you don't mind me getting a little individual about it, is in a beginning or in a beginning of God and with heaven and earth creation. Creation of heaven, earth, and God, suggesting a weird cosmological trinity here. God, as God is known with heaven and earth, or heaven, earth, and God come in together. One is not separate from the other. See the confusion? It now conflicts with how you basically understand revelation or understand your religion. Your religion is in the beginning, God created everything, but that's not what that first sentence says. And so whenever you receive a text, it's called the Bishat. The Bishat is a text as simple as the text can be. As I write the word out on the board for the purpose of this hour, you can see on the first word up here, if it's possible, the word Bishat. And then underneath that word Bishat is the word Remez. Remez is a hint. Remez is a problem when you read the Bishat. Beginning of what? And so the remez implies something is missing here. Tradition of the sages of old understand the word to be wisdom. It is actually the phrase in a beginning, or in the beginning, if you want, in English, of wisdom. And the beginning of wisdom starts with the creation of the world. Without the creation of the world, there is no such thing as wisdom, or wisdom is responsible for our understanding about the concept of creation. And then the drosh, that third word there is what I'm going to be doing this hour. You squeeze out what the Peshat is, you see the problem in the Peshat, and you begin to interpret and reinterpret to understand a better understanding of what the received text is. And if you are successful, you'll reach the fourth level called the Sod. The Sod is the mystery. The Sod is that which is the profound teaching that's supposed to be implied in that received text. Simply put, or more complicated now, is that every received text has its complications. It is what it is, but is it the original intent of the author or authors to be that way? And that's where language comes in. Language influences the way we think. Language is what causes the factuals to become actually actuals. So as I reread that first sentence, it will be in a beginning of wisdom. Wisdom's beginning is God creates heaven and earth. And the phrase that you have the verb before the word God is a Hebrew or Semitic characteristic. You normally have your subject and then the verb in Anglo-Saxon languages. But in Semitic languages, it is possible for the third person, masculine singular, to have the verb first if what you're emphasizing is not so much the subject, but the action done by that subject, in this case, creation, done by the deity. And the word for deity here, Elohim. Elohim is a plural word. It's not a singular word, but then Elohim has a verb that has barak, created, in the singular. Get the problem? The same word Elohim can translate as gods, G-O-D-S, or can be translated as God, G-O-D. And for my Christian listeners of this particular tape, the Christianity understanding of Elohim is indeed a plural. It's a unity of the three, called the triunity. God the Father, or in today's language, God the Parent, God the Son, or in today's language, God the Child, and then God the Spirit. And that's how Christians understand the Elohim. Jews and Muslims will understand the Elohim without a triunity, a singular, absolute singular. And that is where interpretation comes in. You got the remez, the hint is singular or plural. You got the interpretation, but the interpretation is in the way of a language. And the language is by way of the experience of a people or of a generation in and out in the history of time. That is how I deal with a text. Take the next sentence, and then we go into the Akedah. The next sentence I read in English. Now the earth was unformed and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovers over the face of the waters. The Hebrew word for spirit is the word ruach, ruach Elohim. In the Christian Bibles, that word spirit is spelled with a capital S, not with a small s. In my Jewish translation, I have spirit with a small s. And in my reason mind, that is to say, my rational mind, that word ruach has a double meaning. It means spirit, but it also means wind. And in my way of looking at the cosmological origin of the world, it is a wind hovers over the waters and not that word spirit. So how is it spirit substitutes for wind? Again, it's language in the history of man. Man is now the church. Man is now the mosque. Man is now the synagogue. And it's traditions that we interpret whether to really see that word ruach as spirit, small s, capital S, or read it simply as wind. That's what the problems are. As we take a look at the story of the Akedah is Genesis chapter 22. This is the story that's basically responsible for that word Holocaust that's now part of everybody's vocabulary. It's basically the story of the binding of Isaac, known as the Akedah, that's the Hebrew word, misunderstood by non-Jews, particularly in the Christian world, as the sacrifice of Isaac. Why the sacrifice of Isaac? Because it's seen as a paradigm to the crucifixion of Jesus. So Christians see the Hebrew Bible, at least conservative evangelical Christians and others, as being a proof text or a pretext of that which is fulfilled in the Second Testament. Jews do not see it this way. And the question is there a sacrifice of Isaac or is there a binding of Isaac? The story is very peculiar. We have the testing of Isaac, according to what the tradition says here, And essentially, you have God calling Abraham and calling him by name, and Abraham responding, Hineni, here I am. That phrase, here I am, Hineni, is found several places in the Bible. It's found in Exodus chapter 3, where Moses basically has his first revelation of the burning bush, and his name is called Moses, and he says Hineni. It's found in Isaiah chapter 6, where Isaiah is about to say Hineni, and he says it, and his mission is the destruction and the catastrophe that's affecting Israel or Judah at that particular time. That word Hineni is here I am, Lord. What do you demand of me? So goes the interpretation of the Hineni, or the Hebrew phrase Hineni. Abraham is called and he's told to take his son, his begotten son. Well, Abraham has two sons. One is of the concubine Hagar, and one is of his beloved wife Sarah. Sarah is barren, and so she gives over the concubine Hagar, who gives Abraham his first son Ishmael. But Ishmael is now about to be separated, as Sarah is pregnant, has her son, and she sees a rivalry between son Isaac and son Ishmael. And so you have the departure of Ishmael, eventually becomes the paradigm of Islam. You have the continuity of Isaac, who becomes the paradigm of the Jews in their destiny. As with Isaac, that Abraham is told to take his son and to offer him as an olah. I read from the text itself, sentence number 3, I believe it is, of Exodus chapter 22. Abraham Let's get the Hebrew phrase. The Hebrew phrase is found in sentence number 2. And God said to Abraham, take now your son, your only son, of whom you love, and his name is Isaac. Get yourself on the way, bring him to Mount Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering. That phrase, offer him at a place called Moriah as a burnt offering. The Hebrew word is olah. Olah means to go up, to ascend. That word burnt offering in my 1917 translation is what I find. In the new Bible translations, offer him as a holocaust. That word holocaust, holocaustos, a burnt offering, is referenced here in regarding the victimization of Isaac. The test of Abraham is to offer him as a holocaust, a burnt offering. Keep that word in mind, a holocaust, a burnt offering. We're then told that Abraham basically takes a knife in hand, takes the wood for the burnt offering, takes Isaac, tells those who assist him to stay here as he goes with his son to the mountaintop for the purpose of burnt offering. I'm reading sentence number 7 of Genesis chapter 22, where Isaac says to his father, Vayomer Yitzchak el Avraham Aviv, and then continues, Vayomer says, my father, and the father responds, here I am. And then the son says, Vayomer, third time, I see the fire, meaning the implements for the fire, the tree, meaning the implements for the burning wood. But where is the set? Where is the lamb for the olah, for the burnt offering, etc.? What is interesting is the phraseology Vayomer. The first Vayomer, and he said, there are no words reported. The second Vayomer, you have a conversation. And the third Vayomer, you have a conversation. The question asked by me, why is there a lack of conversation by the first? And he said, why is there silence? Keep that word in mind. There is silence. We don't know what was said. And then we're told that Abraham is about to sacrifice his son. And then the interruption of an angel of God, a Malach Hashem, basically comes forth and says, don't send your knife on a boy because you fulfilled the test. The question now is very hard. Why is it that Abraham was willing to sacrifice a son of old age? According to tradition, Mother Sarah was 99. Abraham was over a century old. The boy is not a kid now. He's now like a teenager, maybe older than that. And according to tradition, Isaac is the one who convinces Abraham to go ahead with the sacrifice. But Abraham doesn't object, it seems. Whereas in another story involving Abraham, dealing with Sodom and Gomorrah, God is being tested by Abraham. Should not the judge of all the earth do justly? And so the count was made. How many righteous are found? Going down from the number 40, 30, 20, eventually number 10. And there aren't 10, so God and Abraham depart. Why is there not a debate with God regarding the offering of the one son, the beloved son, the one that's going to be the destiny of the people of Abraham, according to the Torah tradition? That is the question here. The fact that the story is introduced by Elohim, God demands the sacrifice. What is not known to the rest of us is my now explanation. Man is made b'tselem Elohim. Man is made in the image of God. There are two divine names that are frequently used in the Torah referring to the Eternal One. One is the word Elohim, translates as God. One is the word Hashem, the Yud He Vav He, the Tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God, translates as Lord. Man is made in the image of God implies what man sees to be attributes are associated with God as well. The two major attributes, one is justice and one is mercy. Justice is associated with Elohim, and mercy, rachamim, from the word rechem, womb. There's your maternal love there. The womb is the rachamim, is the mercy, is associated with the four-letter name of God, which I will now pronounce as simply the name, Hashem. It's interesting that God, justice, is the initiator of this particular trial. And it is the Malach Hashem, it is the angel of the Lord of mercy that stops the sacrificial offering. Where is Hashem? Why is God not stopping that sacrificial offering? Why is a Malach Hashem interceding? These are questions that are asked when it comes to the Shoah, as this particular Akedah is a basis of that very word Holocaust to describe the greatest catastrophe of Jewish history involving two-thirds of European Jewry between 1939 and 1945. Interesting. The test of Abraham, you might say, and the interruption of the mercy of the Lord by way of an angel. As a result of this particular text, we're told that the seed of Abraham will be like the sands of the sea and the stars of heaven. That's all based on this judgment, of which Abraham calls the place the Lord shall be seen, or it's known also as Moriah, which becomes later the place that the temples are built. The first temple destroyed in 587, the second temple destroyed by the Romans in the year 70. And as I speak right now, the third most sacred spot in all of Islam, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the contention during this month of Ramadan of what's going on as we speak right now in Jerusalem. Don't you see there's neither before or after? Everything is interrelated. Tadir ve'eno tadir, that which is often, that which is not often. That's how you solve a problem. The judgment of Abraham, who is known as Av Hamon Goyim, the father of multitudes of nations. Yeah, let's go over that name Abraham. Abraham was originally Avram. Abraham becomes Avraham now. And a multitude of nations seen by the eyes of Islam and Christianity and Judaism is Abraham, Avraham, Ibrahim, and from whom you get Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Do you see the interconnection? And do you see the type of problems that can be developed here? Justice and mercy. Where is God? An angel responds. May it not be that the mercy of the God, that is to say, the Malach Hashem, it has to appear because God is God is God, has to reconcile how he tested Abraham by demanding the sacrificial offering. Or maybe God is God as God knows that Abraham is going to fulfill the task. That's why the test was given. But we don't know that. We are limited, but we're made in the image of God. And somehow we come up with these types of explanations. So what does this all have to do with the Holocaust? Elie Wiesel is the gentleman to whom I wrote in the 1980s. And I asked him, Mr. Wiesel, why is it that you chose that word Holocaust to be the terminology of the Shoah that you went through? And he basically said to me, I needed a word. I needed a word to capture the fire, the burning fire, the night fire of the children. I am paraphrasing Elie Wiesel's letter to me in the 1980s, handwritten, in which I asked him the question, why did you choose the word Holocaust? His response, the fire, the burning of children at night. Holocaust is not a Hebrew word. It's a Greek word, holocaustos. It's a burnt offering to the gods, or if you want, to God. And the word itself was used by Elie Wiesel and eventually was dropped by him. The word became catastrophic for all kinds of tragedies. It became nullified as far as he's concerned, and he felt he should not use that word again. And the question raised by a person of my caliber is, why did you have to even choose a word? The word used by Yiddish speaking Jews during the period of World War II is simply the Mohammedan, the warriors, or another phrase that's used, the Horban. The word Horban deals with destruction, but specifically deals with destruction of the temples, the Horban. But Mohammedan seems to be a common phrase, the warriors. And now let me play with my hypotheses. Let language influence how you think. If you're talking about a major catastrophe, then use a simple general phrase, the war years. It has more of an impact than a singular word, the Holocaust. And the Holocaust with a THE in front of it, meaning the definitive Holocaust. It does not mean this was the original use of that word. Holocaust was first used in one of my articles with the Armenians back in the 1920s, or even before then. It's used by other type of catastrophes. But it must be admitted that when it comes to saying the Jewish Holocaust, we don't bother to use the phrase the Jewish Holocaust. We say the Biafran Holocaust. We say the Palestinian Holocaust now. We say this Holocaust. But for the Jews, it's just simply the Holocaust. But the word itself implies a theological derivative. If indeed the Holocaust is a burnt offering to God, then Nazi murderers are seen as God's attendants to bring Jews as a burnt offering. I, Ze'ev Garber, bear testimony. I cannot accept this. It is, in my opinion, a total rejection of what Judaism and its tribes are all about. I have in hand Mr. Liesel's book called Night. You don't see a cover. I've been using it so many times. You do see a back to it. And if you're able to visualize as I guide you through it, the back has three people hanging on a noose, three different nooses. They're hanging. And if you mind me saying it, the last hanging that took place at Auschwitz, the most infamous of all the death camps. Why that particular hanging and that middle person in particular is emphasized by Elie Wiesel, who says, as the bodies are hanging on the gallows of Auschwitz, no longer burning, now hanging, the last deaths are by hanging, not by cremation. That middle child or that middle person just dangles and dangles and dangles and dangles. And the reason for the dangling, there's not enough weight in the body of that person to bring down the suffocation and death. I don't know what to say about this image, except I'm going to interpret it. You have three, and the middle one dangles. May this not be seen as where is the Abisha? When Elie Wiesel in his story in Night is asked, where is God when you see hangings of this nature? And Wiesel's response, the Abisha is due. The Almighty God is there, pointing to the gallows, pointing to the flinging of three bodies. And watch the interpretation. If the Abisha, meaning the Almighty One in Yiddish, is there swinging, two are now dead. One is still swinging. The one that's swinging is the middle person. As a Christian observer, I can easily see this as a Trinitarian concept. You have the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the Son is the middle one. And the Son, the next generation, the Son dangles and dangles and dangles. Is that what he has in mind? Is that, excuse me for a second. Is that what Elie Wiesel has in mind? I doubt it very much. But don't you see the final interpretation comes about? I'm sorry for that interruption. That's how interpretation comes about. And I guess for me, if the association is made with Jesus, as Christians have every right to do the interpretation. Then let's go to the crucifixion of Jesus. The story where the Jews are responsible with the Sanhedrin, which I doubt very much, but a Roman execution does take place. And Jesus' reported last words are Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. If Jesus is the committed Jew, which I believe he was, if Jesus is a nationalist Jew, which I assert he is, if Jesus is a righteous Jew, which I maintain he is, then why does he say, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani? My God, why do you forsake me? And maybe, just maybe, that's what a Jew says when he faces extermination without reason and without justification, when he faces extinction without finishing his job. Why are you forsaking me is a question challenging God. Why are you not here with me is a question endowing God. Jesus should be saying the Shema. He should be saying, Hear, O Israel, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Jesus is not saying the Shema. He's asking, why are you not here? Keep that in mind. The absence of God is a basic Shoah tragedy that's mentioned in the Shoah literature. If God is here, then why does he not do something? If God is present, is he participating in the execution? As some Christians maintain he is, and the execution is because Jews rejected Jesus. I don't accept that interpretation at all, nor do Christians today, nor should anybody. But the absence of God, how much more so if God is God is God, is everywhere? That is a basic question that doesn't go away that easily. And quite frankly, it's embarrassing. Why so? You say the Kaddish, you say the prayer for the dead, which has phrases not of dead at all. It has phrases of glory. Yitkadav Yitkadash Shmei Rabbah, great and magnified is his great name. And yet somehow you magnify the name of God with destruction of innocence? Does God take this lightly? That's my interpretation. The verse that comes to mind when you take a look at Elie Wiesel's Night is a verse that deals with the following statement: 7 times over and 7 times never. I'm reading from my verses here. Listen as I read this one paragraph, which is probably the most quoted, read paragraph in all of Holocaust literature. Never shall I forget the night. And as I read that word never, I want you to count how many times that word never is used. Never shall I forget the night, the first night in camp, which has turned my life into one long night. 7 times cursed and 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the little faces of the children whose bodies I saw turned into wreaths of smoke beneath a silent blue sky. Never shall I forget those flames which consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget the nocturnal silence which deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments which murdered my God, those moments which murdered my God and had in my soul and turned my dream to dust. Never shall I forget these things, even if I'm condemned to live as long as God himself. How many times have I read never? If you counted with me, it's not once, it's not twice, 7 times the word never. 7, that word 7, the word 7 associated with the 7 days of creation. The word 7, where God is God is God. That word 7, which if you want to break it up into 4 and 3, would be the 4 of the Tetragrammaton, the 3 of the Trinity. And then Mr. Wiesel adds one more time the word never. 7 times dealing with the tragedies of the smoke and the burning children and the fire at nights. And then Eli ends with an additional word never. The 8th never has nothing to do with heaven. according to Zev Garber's interpretation. The eighth never has to deal with man. Man is the second chapter of Genesis. Genesis 1 is God. Genesis 2, man takes over. The Avdol Shomro, to serve the earth and to watch over it. That never, number 8, is the never. That is man's responsibility. Never forget, never again. Are you taking here? Are you heeding what I'm saying? That is the phrase. Why is God not involved now? Because God is now separate. God is now in agony. And let me perhaps understand that with you better. I have in my hands a prayer shawl. This prayer shawl is worn by Jews during their morning services. This prayer shawl has strings attached to it. I am holding my father's prayer shawl. When my father passed in Jerusalem in 1991 or 2 or thereabouts, I came to Jerusalem. I mourned my father's loss. I took his objects and some of his religious objects I carried home with me. I have his talit, his prayer shawl. I want you to take a look at the prayer shawl. I want you to imagine what I have in hand here. Each one of the strings, if you will, has 5 knots. There are 5 knots and there are 8 strings. You have to trust me. There are 8 strings that are found and there are 5 knots. You wear the prayer shawl around your body. So there are 4 sides, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and each one of them has 5 knots and 8 strings. Why the 5 knots and 8 strings? Because of the word, I guess, 613. What you have, and let me play with some Hebrew here if you don't mind me doing this, the phrase that's found in the book of Numbers, whereby we're told you are to look, you are to see, and you are to do, in which you wear the concept known as the tzitzit. In the Hebrew Bible, the word tzitzit is spelled this way. In today's Hebrew, the word tzitzit is spelled this way. Just try to imagine what I'm doing here. I have the exact letters repeated, only in today's Hebrew, writing without vowels, we add another letter known as the yud letter. If you take the numerical value of each one of these letters, let's take the spelling here. The letter tzadi is the number 90. The letter yud is the number 10. 90 repeats itself, 10 repeats itself, and the last letter is 400. If I count the particular numbers together, I get 600. 90 and 10 is 100, 90 and 10 is 200, and 400 is 600. The word 600. And then I add the 8 strings, and you come up with 613. That's what the intent is. 613 commandments, positive and negative. And then basically you have the actual spelling that's found in the Torah itself. The Torah itself does not have that additional yud. The Torah itself has sadi, yud, sadi, tav, which will give you the following number. Sadi yud will be 100. This is 90. This is 10. This is 90. And this is 400. So I guess when you add that particular number together, you have 400, 500, 590, right? Yeah. You got 90 and 10 is 100. 100 and then 90 and then 400. So that's 400, 590. And you add your 8 strings there. 8 strings and then 5 knots. I'll give you 13. I'll give you 603. What you have there are the 5 knots and the 8 strings. That's 13. So from that number tzitzit, you get 603. You don't get 613. 10 is actually missing. When you write the word tzitzit with additional yud, you get 613. I guess what I'm getting at is the following. When you play around with commandments, and you play around with the absence of 10 commandments, all kinds of interpretations can now open up. The missing 10 commandments. As we take a look at more literature, there is a story of the 93 Beit Yaakov girls, a strange story which I write about in one of my books called Shoah, the Paradigmatic Genocide, where we're told that 10 girls, or rather 93 girls, essentially were selected to be in a hostel. They choose not the hostel, they choose rather to commit suicide. And what you have is the unusual story of Jewish girls committing suicide rather than being taken to a hostel by the Nazis. How authentic and how true is that story? It's questioned by most historians. It's not a true story. And yet you have people that basically write about that story and claim it is true, including the well-known Yiddish writer by the name of Shalom Asch, including the New York Times in 1943. They came out with an article that said that story possibly happens. It's irrelevant whether the story happened or not. It's the message that's conveyed by this particular story. The story itself has the following message from the girls. I'm going to read to you the actual words written by Sarah, written by the woman who writes the story there, Sarah
Professor,
Schneer.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Is it too?
yes, it's almost time. Would you just
Okay,
consider?
if it's almost time, then maybe what I ought to do is maybe somehow summarize this right now. The question about the girls basically doing the suicide. What's difficult is that under no circumstance is suicide permissible in Jewish law. And yet you have cases of suicide done, but somehow the implication is the suicide was forced upon the individual rather than a willful decision. When you have a suicide, and the suicide of the girls has the implication that Isaac, Isaac was brought to be offered, and we abetted the offering where Isaac was not eventually killed or sacrificed, and we are sacrificing ourselves. There's a message that comes across with this, and the message is to say the Kaddish in our behalf. But how do you say Kaddish over that which is a prohibitive act by Jewish law? The implication is an embarrassment. And the embarrassment is to prevent a situation ever again to decide to be put in that type of situation. These are the type of stories that come across. You have all kinds of stories. You have stories, for example, that deal with Gentiles. The famous story, if I don't mind me saying this right now, is that of the situation where you have the two Bonhoeffer, and you have that particular case whereby a sacrificial offering is made in behalf of Jews. That's what goes on here. And the question is how to interpret these forms. How authentic are they? All right, I think what I'll do is end it right there. And with the question, yeah, I'll basically go into more. Is that what you want? Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Professor, for such an insightful and thought-provoking lecture. While you were narrating the terminologies, I was reminded of your article that I've also quoted in my PhD dissertation. It's Words, Words, and Words, published in 2007 in Hebrew Studies Journal. You discuss the propriety of the terminology of the word Shoah and the Holocaust, and you argue how using a spiritual term for almost overall annihilation of the European Jews makes the Nazis assassins, priests, officiants of a divine decree. And you also further state how, while being specific to the Jewish victims, the usage of the term Shoah in place of Holocaust would thus suggest a sacrificial sin offering. So my question is that do you see that there is the choice of terminology has evolved over time? And if yes, what are the implications of using this specific terminology of Shoah and Holocaust when we discuss them in an academic or a commemorative setting?
I think the concept of using the word Holocaust, which is a burnt offering, would seem to suggest that this is an actual burnt offering to God. I don't see this at all. I see this as mass destruction. In fact, I wrote several articles dealing with the word Shoah. The articles themselves, I brought the books here for display. Here they are. There are two particular books. One, let me just get the books in hand. In this particular book called Found in Translation, a festschrift in honor of Leonard Greenspoon, my article deals with the whole question, as the title itself would seem to imply, about the question of Shoah and how it is basically to be used. In my chapter in this festschrift, it's entitled Lost in Transmission, God, Shoah, and Holocaust. That word Shoah occurs a number of times in the Hebrew Bible, including that chapter 6, where Isaiah is basically sent on his mission, where he says the word Hineni, and the reference of the tribes of Israel being totally destroyed, and the language used is the word Tisha'eh. That phrase, which is utterly destroyed, but has nothing to do with divine decree as interceding, it's massive destruction, catastrophic, done by man and his decision. That to me basically deals with destruction in history. If you're going to invoke the name of God, then the possibility of the word Holocaust can be invited. But that implies that God is using instruments called the human instrument, called the enemy of your people, as his weapon to judge the people. That is extremely difficult to understand. And as a result of saying the word Holocaust, then Jews would basically be emphasizing that the Holocaustal result is due to their actions. Otherwise, God would not let this thing to happen. And hence, don't use that word Holocaust. Use the word Shoah. That's the way I see it. That word Holocaust has been used continuous times, even to the degree that's been denied, even to the point that Jews are not the only ones who have a Holocaust. Take, for example, today's term genocide. The Israeli government is doing what it has to do. Admittedly, innocence by everybody is dying. And yet Israel is being accused of a genocide. The word genocide never existed in the English language. That word came about in the early 1940s. Let me repeat myself. That word genocide does not exist in the English language. In the 1941-42 period, that word was first coined, dealing with destruction of Jews, I might add. That doesn't mean that before 1941, whatever, there wasn't a thing called mass destruction of people, but the terminology did not exist. And I guess the point is that when you kill anybody, it is a genocide in the making. Killing one person is like killing the whole world. It's a rabbinic teaching that goes back almost 2,000 years ago. That's the way you deal with it. Words influence how we think. Of course, there are massive people of innocence on the Palestinian side who are being killed right now. And the best I can say is I wish that doesn't happen. But Israel has also its own need to be defended and gives warning to move out. The same thing can be said of the enemy to Israel. That's the tragedy. The way to deal with it is to sit down and talk and discuss and disagree. But that is not what people have the ability to do now, unfortunately. The word show up is the word I think that will work. It means a catastrophic destruction. The word is used in the book of Job. The word is used throughout different parts of the Hebrew Bible, as we point out in this article here. And also there's another book edited by Roberta Sabat called Troubling Topics, Sacred Texts, in which I go into the Akedah in great detail. And as far as the 93 girls are concerned, what is remarkable is you have writings by an Orthodox group. The 93 girls story comes from the Agudat Rabbanan. This is a very Orthodox Jewish group. I was notified by one of them who is responsible for the letter. The letter itself is so important. I decided to publish it as part of my book on Shoah, the paradigmatic genocide. Let me give you a flavor for it. This is what the letter looks like. This is a copyright of the letter. The letter is in German. The German is kind of incomplete. The letter does not make any reference to taking one's life to be against Jewish law. It basically compares it to the Akedah of Isaac, where Isaac was brought for the sacrificial offering. We were brought and we went beyond it. These are 93 virgins who choose not to be violated. They were to be washed, so to speak, and prepared for violation in a brothel. The story itself is denied by the first historian who reflects upon it, significant historian Lucy Davidowitz, whose book called The War of the Jews, and she writes in her introduction, she rejects the story completely. The story deals with taking your own life. According to Jewish law, halakha, you are not to take your own life. You are to scratch out the eyes of your enemy as much as possible. And yet 93 girls are able to say Tehillim, Psalms. They take a bath for purification. They say the Vidui, and they commit suicide. It doesn't make sense, except the paradigmatic teaching is there. And that's what Garber does. A paradigm is there. And the paradigm basically is violation of the Jewish sanity will not be tolerated in the other circumstances. And if death is necessary, then death will be the answer. That's also true of the book I had that I want to discuss today called the Sunflower. Simon Wiesenthal's Sunflower. The whole thesis of the book is right there on the cover. Look at that face, first of all. It's a bandaged face of a young German activist who's asking on his deathbed, please forgive me, please forgive me, please forgive me. And what you see around that head are are sunflowers. Yeah, Wiesenthal writes about sunflowers where you bury the dead. The sunflowers, a sign of life, I guess. The actual book itself has on the cover a young Jew is taken from a death camp to to a makeshift army hospital. He's led to the bedside of a Nazi soldier whose head is completely swathed in bandages. The dying Nazi blindly extends his hand towards the Jew, and in a cracked whisper, begins to speak. The Jew listens silently while the Nazi confesses to having participated in the burning alive of an entire village of Jews. The soldier, terrified of dying with his burden of guilt, excuse me, begs absolution from the Jew. He's about to die, so he wants some kind of absolution. Having listened to the Nazi story for several hours, torn between the horror and compassion for the dying man, the Jew finally walks out of the room without saying anything. That is another theme. When Abraham is addressed by his son Isaac, we don't have a conversation. When there's a story found with Cain and Abel, that Cain says to Abel, nothing is mentioned. And then the very next sentence in Genesis chapter 4, Cain kills his brother Abel. Oh, another Torah manuscript of the Samaritans has the phrase, let us go out to the field. Don't you get it? How you receive a text is how you're going to be influenced. You listen to the agony of a young German who simply says, I'm sorry for what I did. I burnt a village. According to the actual story, Jews were put into a 3-story house and the fire and were burnt alive. It's incredible to see this or to hear this. And Wiesel, if you will, in this case, it's Wiesenthal, does he not show any compassion? Or is his thinking, who am I to judge you? Go to the ashes, they will judge you. And a young man, he's now completely bandaged. He knows he's going to go to judgment according to the way he thinks. He wants some kind of absolution for the people whom he's murdered. He gets silence from them. And what Wiesenthal does is basically seek out this boy's mother. And she talks about her only son. And she talks about her husband who opposed Nazism, the son who became a member of the Nazi youth, who could have reported everything that the family did that was against Nazism. The son was beloved, a handsome son. Wiesenthal now sees the son face to face rather than a bandage. And Wiesenthal has the commitment, should he tell the mother what happened to her son. He chooses to be quiet. Let the mother have the sanctity of a very righteous boy. Silence is deafening. And what about this Kaddish to God? Do you not know what I'm getting at? No, you do not. God is made in man's image when you use this language. Man wears his prayer shawl. Man wears his phylacteries. Sun on your hand and frontlets between your eyes. Every day, Zev Garber gets up except for holidays and Shabbat and puts on the tefillin. Well, God also wears tefillin. In God's tefillin, there is a phrase, "Who is like you among the nations, O Israel?" Found a sentence in Chronicles chapter 17, 1 Chronicles. What a story has it that Mashiach ben David, the Messiah to come, and Isaac, son of Abraham, Yitzchak ben Abraham, every New Year Rosh Hashanah, they knock on the doors of heaven to wish the Abishta, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, a good Yantif, a Shana Tova, a Happy New Year. Comes 1939 and the knock on the door is not being responded to. Isaac says to Mashiach ben David, "Why is the door not opening?" "Well, let's open it ourselves." And they do, and they see the Holy One, blessed be He, sitting on His throne. They see the Holy One, blessed be He, covered by His talit. They say, "Good Yontif, good Yontif, good Yontif." There's no response. Isaac says to Mashiach ben David, "Something is strange here. Let's go closer. Let's take a look." They approach the Holy One, blessed be He. As according to Isaiah chapter 6, is surrounded by seraphims. And Isaac says to Mashiach ben David, "You grab a hold of one side, I'll grab the other side of the talit, of the prayer shawl, and let's pull it. Let's say hello to him. Let's see his face." And they do that, and Mashiach ben David begins to scream. And Isaac says, "My God, what's happened?" You see, people, God sits on his throne, and he sits on his throne with tefillin, with head phylacteries. Look at this picture. This is from Messianic Jews. This is one of their books. Are you able to see Jesus? Are you able to see him? Are you able to see the talit around his loins? Are you able to see his head? Are you able to see the icon on his head? The deca to the full line, the sign on your head, and the frontlets between your, sorry for my teeth. The sign on your head and frontlets. That's the Jesus. Now imagine God. God wears the same symbols, only the head tefillin is off his head.
I wish we could go on and on, Professor, but I think I'm just going to wrap it up now.
All right, let me wrap up with this. My teeth are coming out, sorry. What you have basically is the screaming of the Mashiach, the messianic figure, and the one who is the paradigm of the longevity of the line of Abraham, both screaming, "Pick up your tefillin, pick up your head tefillin, pick up the ashes, bury the ashes. Don't let move over. Don't let the enemies, don't let nations, you, God, pick up your children." God does not answer. Maybe that's why Jews write G-D instead of G-O-D.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. It was an absolute honor to have you here with us. And I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of everyone present and everyone that will be watching your lectures. So thank you for always being a guiding light, a source of inspiration, and a mentor par excellence. Thank you so much, Professor. And may you continue to remain an inspiration for all of us for decades to come, as I always say. Thank you, everybody.
Always, I'm grateful for your invitation, and the Zoom permits this to happen. And just come knocking, we'll come responding.
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please join us again now on April 8th, where Dr. Robert Wolfe will be talking about his personal story, crafting historical fiction with humanity. Thank you, everybody.